Welcome to the Biltmore Church Podcast. Our church exists to glorify God by making disciples of Jesus who reach up, reach in, and reach out. And this podcast is a resource that's hopefully going to help you do just that. We're jumping back in for another great conversation today. As you know, we're in the middle of our Judges teaching series. And last Sunday, we talked about Judges chapter 8 and the back half of Gideon's life. So many lessons to learn from his life. So much more than you can cover in just one Sunday morning. So we had a great follow-up conversation today about Gideon and so many great application steps that you can take in your life. So we're looking forward to that conversation. Let me do some quick introductions. My name is Christian Cooper. I serve on staff here. And I'm here today with Michelle Myers, who is our discipleship coordinator, and Pastor Bruce Frank, who of course is our lead pastor. And we're going to jump right into today's conversation about Judges chapter 8. All right, Pastor Bruce, you did a great job on Sunday, continuing week 4 of our Judges teaching series in Judges chapter 8, talking about kind of the second half of Gideon's life. And it gets a little bit depressing, takes a turn.
A little bit. Yep.
Takes a turn, and talking a lot about how to ruin your life, the warning signs, and I want to dig into a lot of that today. But one of the things I really want to talk about is the trap of success that's so present in that chapter, and you mentioned it several times in your message. So what do you think is it that typically makes success more dangerous than failure?
Yeah, I mean, at the core, it certainly is, I think. I mean, it's certainly just, you see it in Scripture all the time and how they would forget the Lord, and you can look in the mirror and see it. I think it helps you. It just helps you. Well, I mean, the opposite would be if it's really a difficult time. I told you about that. There's a song. I don't know if y'all heard that song, Desperate? Mm-hmm. Man, that exemplifies kind of on the good side when you're just desperate and you're crying out to God. And we don't like it. But God loves it when we're like that. God loves it when we're dependent. And it's not that he likes it when we're hurting, but he loves it when we lean in and are dependent. But something happens. I think we don't, when it's going really good, you just get either kind of comfortable or sniffing a little bit on lazy. You certainly are, we're certainly, thinking, look what I did. Look at how good things are going. I think anytime you go through a difficult time, it lends more towards self-reflection than it does when you're going through when you're going through a great time, you're like, look, you might not say it, but you're like, I'm killing it. I'm crushing it here. Yeah. Even I've told people, COVID was so, not good on 100 different ways, but, going into COVID, church-wise even, we had so much momentum. I honestly remember thinking, even in hiring practices, getting a little bit, not lazy, but just thinking, just plug and play. There's so much, the system's already down, we got momentum, etc. Just put him in there and he'll flourish. Right. But then a few times you don't see somebody flourish or they get underdeveloped, and during COVID, when everything kind of stopped, like that helped us reflect on, okay, how can we improve some things? A part of it is like, how do we develop these young pups like you, and versus having it just hope it happens? Yeah. Because before it was happening, but it was accidental. Or somebody like you that was self-motivated, you would have to do it. But I think since then we tried to, we got to be more intentional. And that happened because you're going through a hard time in COVID, and you're like, oh God, what is this going to look like when it's done? So even in that regard, I just think when things are going good, we just believe our own press clippings a little bit, and we don't really want to say it. We just get comfortable. We assume or presume a little bit on the Lord. Yeah. We forget the John 15:5. Apart from me, you can do nothing. We forget about it because we're like looking around like, there's a lot of good fruit here. I must have had, something to do with this kind of thing. And we just start to, we talked about breadcrumbing you to death. To me, it's usually just a breadcrumb. We just believe one thing, believe another thing, and then it just gets us out in the field. Yeah, it's like we would never say it out loud. Yeah, but it becomes sort of a posture. But and think about how many times the Lord would hey, put a memorial stone down here, but I would say it 100 times. Much more people can handle adversity than handle prosperity. Much more. Adversity is hard, but prosperity is just deadly. Yeah. You see a few people walk away from the Lord in adversity, but you also see people flourish. Yeah. Right. But think about how many times that you've seen somebody really have a lot of, quote, blessings, and then just fast forward 5 years later, for whatever reason, it's like they would do anything to go back. Yeah. So I don't know exactly what it is. It's just very apparent.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, and there's just a big difference in how God defines success and then how the world defines success.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start chasing the world's definition of it, then oftentimes you will stop pursuing success as God defines it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just assume that if I'm pursuing success, then spiritual growth and maturity are just going to come alongside it, you're going to be super disappointed every time.
Yeah. So I want to dig into a couple of really the main ideas of your message, those two big warning signs, the frame of minds we're sort of been circling here, which is either I deserve this or I got this. So what are some of the warning signs you've seen, whether in you or in other people, when we're in that I deserve this posture?
Lack of gratitude is a big one. And that's actually, in many ways, that is the kryptonite for entitlement too. Just begin to be very grateful. But anytime you're not grateful for stuff, that's kind of like a warning. It's like it was out of Geiger's book of the same title, but it's that idea of, I kind of deserve a little bit better than this. And it can happen, but it always happens when you've had success. When you feel, again, like you deserve this. And it can go from something as simple like, oh, I'm not that grateful to, so I was talking to somebody in the lobby. In ministry, it can be deadly because, you got to know when it's like James talks about your temptations, and it's actually where there's almost like a rhythm to it. You got to, know where your danger zones are. And not as much now, but especially when we're doing 3, when we do vertical service, especially then, because you stay kind of up all day. Your adrenaline would stay up because you do the morning, but then you couldn't really go home and chill because you knew you had to be back at 4. And so you didn't really let down. So anyway, all that being said, I knew Sunday nights was like a danger zone because I was emotionally just spent.
Right.
But also you can kind of fall into that, on the innocent deal, you could say, well, I deserve a quart of ice cream. And that's
or a
innocent.
gallon.
Yeah.
Or a gallon or whatever. And I'm saying that just the mentality is, I've worked for the Lord and I've sacrificed a lot. And some guys even get that whole mentality in ministry because they're like, I could have made more money if I'd have gone into my dad's business. Or It's just a deadly lie because all it is just one of those 3 lies. Just one of those 3. But the entitlement, again, doesn't usually take you out. It just sets you up is kind of and I was thinking about that in the message. That's why I was like, it's like a body blow. It's not a knockout punch. But even like, little stuff. If you run a business, you're like, I deserve a parking space, or you stop giving credit to people who helped you, and you like absorb. All these are like flashing lights, and you're like, and part of the leadership is like if you're at the a bad leader when things go bad, they're in the back of the room. But a good leader, when it goes bad, you're at the front of the room. You're taking the blame, and you're at the back of the room when things go good, so that other people can get credit. So if you're inverting those, that's another sign.
I think a big one too is what happens when things don't go the way you think they need to go or the way you want them to go. Because it's the flip side. It's, well, I deserved this, but I'm not getting it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And when you look at people as tools instead of people, which is what he did with Succoth and Ephraim, that's what he did. Ephraim, he treated a different way, even though it was virtually the same scenario with one of them. And we didn't even have time to go through it, but he gets really harsh with them because what are they going to do? They can't bring me anything. They can't do anything for me. They can't even help the battle. You're just a bunch of whiners. Is kind of what he did. So he threatened them. If we really want to look into it, he went back and tore down their town and killed some of them. The other ones, he was just like, let me just kiss up to you because I need you. I need you to be on my team, which is, we've talked about 100 times, just the fear of man.
Yeah.
All those are just, they're a little, not any of them will take you out, but just, it shows they just need to be it's like the smoke from a fire that Augustine would always say. Is like, all right, that's showing you something underneath the hood is kind of getting off.
Yeah, and we start to believe that our gifts are self-generated instead of being given. And so that's when you start to take credit for something and then forget, I was given this. Every good thing comes from the Father above.
Yeah.
And when we forget that, then we start to act like we are entitled to things that we're not.
Sure, certainly. You look at, that's what Gideon was doing. We laugh at him because you're like, how did you not know it was the Lord? You only had 300 people. Yeah. How much clearer can he make it? But that was it 1 Corinthians 4? It's like, what do you have that you did not receive? What did you? what do you have that you didn't receive? It's a gift. So why are you acting like you didn't receive it?
Yeah.
And that you earned this? So we're the same way. We have the same propensities. We didn't really talk solution that much on those three, just for time-wise. But, when it comes to like the flesh, I think community, and of course, all those things kind of get wrapped up into that one. But then the other one is, generosity cuts out the whole materialism, and then pursuing humility. You're not going to capture it, but at least pursue after it. Do the stuff that helps you be humble. That's why I love guys that, like I was in a meeting earlier this week, or last week, whatever, with pastors of the largest churches in the country. And it's just interesting, the posture. The ones that you naturally gravitate toward you can tell they pursue humility. They pursue it. And the ones you're kind of like, I don't want to be like that guy. You're like, there's just something. But then what you really have to do is look in the mirror and you go,
right,
which one am I trending toward?
Right.
Which one of those two? That's when we looked at, did we mention the Three Kings book last week?
I think we mentioned it before.
A couple of weeks ago.
Man, if not, I put it, if you're looking for a little book to read, The Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards is gold.
Yeah, it's short too.
It's short. It's like 70 pages. He's got another great one called The Prisoner in the Third Cell about John the Baptist when he was struggling. He's like, "Are you the Christ?"
Oh, wow.
You're like, "You didn't know? Like, you just gave up everything." But he does it from that, kind of the third person deal. But that the reason I say is like the Three Kings book. The first king is Saul. And Saul was I was like, I don't want to be a Saul because I've seen some Sauls. I was like, I don't want to be a Saul.
Yeah.
I guess everybody kind of wants to be a David for the most part, and then you don't want to be an Absalom either.
Yeah.
But that just kind of varies on where you are in life.
Those are the ways you're going to drift. You're not going to drift into being a David.
No, you're not. You're not going to drift. I mean, what'd you say last week or week before? It was like,
you only drift in one direction.
Yeah, you only drift in one direction, and it's not toward godliness.
Right. Yeah.
You drift away from godliness, so you got to swim toward godliness.
Yeah, man, that's great. So I'd love to get into some of those application points here in a minute, but first, let me hit that second. Any difference in the warning signs when you get to the "I got this" frame of mind?
I mean, I got this says, you don't pray that much. That's always an indicator. It's a personal indicator for me. If I'm doing perfunctory prayers and in a couple days of that, I'm like, what in the world are you doing? Or even just not bathing like Sunday morning, if I'm trying to make sure every jot and tittle is perfect because I usually get here about 6 and the sermon's done, but usually I'm editing and stuff. But if I just edit for 2 hours versus edit for a little bit of time and then really pray, that's a bad indicator. For me, it's a bad indication. Right. You're like, you're thinking that the precision is the key. It's like, bro, you've had 20 hours. You think one extra. How about a little bit of time praying versus, making sure the alliteration is done or whatever. But for me, that's it. I mean, prayerlessness, isolation. You kind of see that in Gideon's life. You certainly see it in Samson's. Those are warning times. Not being teachable, no matter what your age is. Not being teachable is a big thing. You can always learn. Like I was talking to a couple young guys this past. Now, when I started at that meeting, I was the young guy, and then now I'm not. So, so I get the young guys want to talk. So one dinner and one breakfast, and then I was like, just be teachable. You can always learn from somebody, even if you disagree with them 99% of the time. You can learn. Maybe it's a warning. Maybe it's an example. I'm just saying, learn from everybody. Be yourself, but learn from everybody. Put it through a grid. Don't implement everything. But when you stop learning, that's usually an indication that, whether it be church or anything, you're just learning about life and character and all. When you stop learning and stop asking questions, it's like some of these guys that you look at, I won't mention their names, but you look at some of these guys that are greatly used of the Lord. Most people think, oh, they got every answer. They got every answer and all that stuff. But when I've met guys like that, the ones that are not all of them, but the most effective ones, they're very teachable still. They're like asking us, hey, what's going on at Biltmore? Tell me about it. I was like, bro, you've crushed, what are you asking me for? I'm trying to hear to learn from you, and they're asking us. And I'm like, but that's why they are who they are, because they're teachable.
They're learners.
They're learners. They're lifelong learners. And so when you stop learning, you definitely stop leading at that point.
That's great.
I think too, if you have a posture of "I got this," you're probably not pursuing anything of the kingdom.
For sure.
Because if you're saying "I got this" on every ear is heard and every tongue is confessed, like I don't think that's your goal. And so it's probably a good indicator that you're just pursuing the wrong things.
For sure. For sure. And you going back to the I deserve this, one of the ways you can tell for sure is, and it's easier to talk about it on a podcast, but generosity. If you people who think I deserve this rarely are generous. Now they might think they're generous, but as far as biblical generosity, they're not, because they're like, I deserve this. I worked harder, and I deserve this is not that far from self-righteousness. It's like, I deserve this, and the next step is like, you don't deserve this because you're this, that, and the other. And when that happens, you're starting to get further and further away. You're getting just closer to the edge.
That's bad footing.
None of these are a knockout blow, but they're all setting you up, and then all they got to do is just like tap you a little bit.
Yeah. So let's get into some of those. You just mentioned that generosity piece, but you referenced the playbook that the enemy uses against us from that 1 John 2:16 verse. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. So first one there, how have you seen the desire of the flesh show up after success? And then I guess the second part is, how do we fight that with community? Because that seemed to be the antidote that you gave.
It is, but it's more. I think the first one is more multifaceted. Community helps because you got somebody that can go. They can see maybe some patterns of the flesh, but it's a struggle. I mean, even defining the flesh, it's like, how do you define it? It's kind of like that unredeemed part of you. Does it, is it mind renewal like Romans 12? Is it what? So it's kind of like an all swim, I think, on the flesh, because the flesh is. I know what you can't do. As you can't coddle the flesh. I know that doesn't work.
It does not.
And it doesn't. If you try to coddle it, and it's the whole idea of like the guys that have these, you watch them and they'll like having pet tigers and stuff. And then was it a lion or a tiger?
It's a tiger.
Okay, it's like when I see this Joker, when he gets a picture of a tiger, he is with a tiger. Was the tiger doped up?
I
hope he
have
was.
a feeling.
I hope he was doped up, or you're the dope, because I'm like, what is
Maybe both.
But I'm like, that thing can eat you like that, and that's kind of what the flesh does. We kind of, if we coddle it and play around with it and try to massage it and try to kind of keep it where it's supposed to go, that is such a bad deal. So that's what the Bible says. You crucify, you crucify the flesh. Now that's a whole different deal on how do you do that, but that's. For sure. That's the hardest one, I think.
Yeah.
But because the flesh is everything from comfort. So it can be super innocent. Like I said, the gallon of ice cream.
Yeah.
Comfort. And then it can just but it can accelerate from there.
Man, I mean, the role that community would play in that, though, is at least you have other people that maybe don't share your blind spots, because we all have blind spots. And so you will do so much better being protected against yours if you've got some people that have a different perspective from you.
For sure.
And so that's the beauty of bringing people in. Not that any of us are necessarily smarter, but we each have different strengths.
Yeah. It's like just deputize. I can't remember who. I think it's Josh Howerton. That was the first time I heard him say deputize some guys or people, meaning that you are officially, you have my six, and you have permission that if you see something that, if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Not saying anything is not love. Now, you don't need a fruit inspector looking at every tiny little thing. Is like, hey, I heard you cough, or whatever. You need somebody that overlooks most of the stuff. But if they see some main stuff, they're like, hey, you doing okay? Or, you got to have a few of those folks in your
Absolutely.
life.
Yeah, that's great ideas. So second one, desires of the flesh that have something, temptation. How have you seen generosity keep that at bay in people's lives?
You talking about the lust of the eyes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I might have said the wrong one.
Yeah.
Or got me flipped there.
Flesh is like, I want to feel something.
Yeah.
Eyes is like, I want to have something.
Yes.
And again, I think people have, one of these three typically is a little stronger than the other two in people's lives, I think. I think it is. Because some people don't struggle with, they're super generous. They really don't have the, I want tos and all that kind of stuff, but they might struggle with the other one. For me, it's always that myth of, I've heard it said two ways, the myth of there. I think this one is have something is almost, and it's this, and they all bleed together. It's like the pride of life and lust of the eyes. They definitely have some overlap. Right. But, people are like, if I can just get there, then I'll be fully satisfied. And I'm just telling you, we've hit about every, and this goes for anything, but I'll just tell you that's not true. This like, if I get there, it's just, I'm finally not going to want to. And that goes for anything. but it's okay where it is. I mean, it's good to be gold. It could be aggressive. It's good to have markers. It's good to be grateful that God brought us things. But as far as if you think, if I can just get there, if I can have that job, if I can just have that spouse, if I can just have that church size. I mean, that's that meeting I was in, you saw a lot of that. It's like, man, if I could just get to y'all size, I'm like, believe me.
It's not going to satisfy.
Yeah.
You got the same problems and you got the same challenges that you do. It's just a different zero on it or a different whatever. So, yeah, I think it's that there. Or the land of I think somebody else. If I can just be a little bit bigger or skinnier or richer or whatever. It's like, just that land of just it's the carrot. It's like I'm just trying to get it and you never get there.
Okay, so last one there, pride of life. And you said they're all kind of mixed together, but
I don't struggle with that.
no one would. But that'd be something, right? So, and
y'all laughed very quickly. I want the record to show y'all laughed very.
It's a self-aware laugh.
Okay,
Oh yeah,
self-aware.
me too.
Okay.
We'll go
Mirrors
with
all around everyone.
So humility. Pursuing humility there. How have you seen that play out to fight against that?
Just look in my book, Humility and How I Attained It.
It's
a bestseller. It's got no words. It's blank pages.
Still working on it.
Still working on it, yeah. Just want to be something. Again, they're not all, the desire is not necessarily wrong. It's just God wants us to find that in Him instead of the other stuff. And that's the trick. And that's where I didn't take the time to do it. But I mean, there's nothing wrong. I mean, those are most of the time they're God-given desires. And that's why it's like, is it Themea? It's T-H-U, I can say sucketh, I'm just not sure how to say Themea. T-H-U-M-I-A, but epi, which is like the accelerant or the amplifier. So it's like the desire is normal. But then what happens is it overwhelms you. And it begins to it just takes control. And that's what he's talking about. It's like, I gotta have this. I gotta have this right now. I gotta have this much popularity, book sales, likes. I gotta be invited to the prom by a certain group.
Right.
I mean, everybody struggles with it. And we're supposed to find our identity. That's why we find it in the Lord. First, and that's the safest one. Just find it in the Lord. And then the other stuff, it's like, is it C.S. Lewis that talked about just first order, second order? It's like if you get the first order right, then the rest of it will fall in to place.
Yeah.
I've heard it said like the first button, like if you get if you have a dress shirt, if you get the first button wrong, the rest of it's wrong.
That's right. It's all wrong.
If you get the first one right,
That's
everything's
good.
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of like, get that one right. Who is it? One of the church fathers, like, man, love God with all your heart and then do what you please.
Yeah.
If that first one's right.
The order is important.
The order is key, It's not do what you want and then hope God's, God's will, God's bill kind of thing. But I don't know. It is a pursuit. I will just say that. I think we are bent toward pride.
Oh, yeah.
And so you've got to, it's like shaving. You got to shave all the time or else you're just, it's like if you just go, I'm not going to shave for a while, it's going to show up.
You're going to be scruffy.
Yeah. But I think particularly to high achievers, that's probably the one that struggles because you're going to, whatever you're going to do, most of the time you have strong willpower. So, and you're an achiever, and you're gonna get some accolades because our world rewards that. No matter what you leave behind, if you leave your family behind, you leave your health behind, they still applaud it, and that's why you've got to figure out. There's nothing wrong. Somebody said it this way. It's like I don't see work-life balance in the scriptures, just personally.
Yeah,
you do see rhythm in the scriptures, but you don't see. I know you're a big Comer fan, but and he's got a lot of great things to say. I think the one book was like I don't see a lot of work-life balance in the Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
He just went for it.
He just went for it.
Right.
And you don't see a lot of work-life balance in Jesus, which you see rhythm. You see rhythm, living on rhythm, Sabbath rhythms, those kind of things. But I don't know how we got off on that other than just realize that is going to probably be one that, if I want to do something great for God, that's the one you got to keep. Make sure it doesn't get you.
Yeah.
And you got to run the things that you hear through a gospel filter because high achievers are often going to be high learners. You're going to be learning a bunch of things and you can have a bunch of things that sound really smart, like personal pet peeve. The whole saying of, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
It's a very small room.
But run that through a gospel filter. And isn't a better question of, am I humble enough to learn from every person that God places in my life? Or am I prideful enough to think that there is a room that I'm the smartest person in?
Right. Yeah.
And so you've got to really take the intentional steps to not just act on the things that sound clever or super cliche, super familiar. Most of them are probably going to take you in the direction of culture, not in the direction of God.
Yeah.
And most of the time, if you think you're the smartest person in the room, now sometimes you might be, but as soon as you start thinking that, you're starting to drift toward foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
And it just a matter of time. You might have started being the smartest person, but if you keep going down that road, you will soon not be.
Right.
All right, not because you had a bunch of other people come in the room. You're starting to become an idiot, and you're believing your own puffed up, and that just goes nowhere good.
Yeah, bad cycle.
Yeah.
So any last thoughts heading into, as we kind of, we're gearing into this series more and more. Anything else you want to say?
Well, I would just say one other thing is when you talk about a high achiever and all our, the way, because sometimes you are going to be the smartest one in the room. So the question then is, how do you pursue humility if God's gifted you in some areas and God's blessing and you see a lot of his success and all this kind of stuff? I do think this is when you go back to the gospel. You preach the gospel to yourself because, God knows you. God knows the real you. God knows the you that nobody else sees. Because if everybody saw the real you, they probably wouldn't think you're the smartest guy in the room. Right. If they knew what you thought and some of your motivations and all that kind of stuff, that is very humbling just as well. But then you obviously just realize, all right, I was so bad, Jesus had to die for me. So that humble confidence is sort of it is unique to Christianity. It is unique because with pride, if you don't nip it, what happens is you start looking down at other people. The cousin to high achievers, if you're not careful, is self-righteousness, because you're typically high achievers are disciplined, get up, crack of dawn or before. You look at the person that gets up at the crack of noon, and you're like, I already had my quiet time, and I spent time with God, and in your mind, you're like, what have you been doing all day? You know what I've gotten done before you even got your hind end out of bed, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's where that can go down the bad spot. So just, again, nip it. Just preach the gospel to yourself over and over again, which keeps you humble. That is the X factor for sure.
That's great. All right, we're going to close today's episode out with another application step, a little practice for you to put into your week this week. Michelle, what have we got for this week?
Yeah, so I'm going to steal straight from Pastor's message. He asked a great question of, if you were the enemy, how would you take you out? And so, he talked a couple of weeks ago on here about how he has a lot of game film to study on us. Right. And so he can personalize his temptations that he puts in our way. And so taking the time to think about maybe how you struggle to define success, about how you struggle to see success through culture's lens versus through the kingdom lens, and then figuring out what would your weak spots be that the enemy might look at as, I'm going to target this because I think that I have the best chance to succeed in my goal here. And so take that information and then share it with somebody who loves you enough to pray for you in that area, as well as call you out if they see you headed for danger, and then just give them permission to speak truth into your life in that area and others as well. But be specific with them so that they know how they can pray for you in that.
Yeah, I think no matter how strong you think you are, none of us were designed to do it alone.
That's right.
So I love the way you're saying, don't just identify the things that are your weak areas, but bring other people into those so you can support each other. And hopefully that conversation goes two ways with whoever it is that you identify. Love that. That is a great practice. Want to encourage you to do that this week. And of course, we hope today's entire episode has been beneficial to you in your walk with Jesus. It helps grow your faith. I want to invite you to join us Sunday for another week of Judges. We're so excited about where this series is going, and we want you to be a part of it. Join us in person. We'd love to have you there this weekend. And of course, we'll be back next Wednesday for another episode of the podcast. As always, you are loved and sent.